Okay, strictly speaking, it's week 8, but you kind of had the week off, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I want to talk about the two discussion boards from week 7. The first one, which was entirely student led, which, as I'll get to and explain later, is in part explains why you got the week off. Well, I mean, the week off from discussion boards. It has to do with the Missouri model. Now, that was kind of a tricky question. Why? Well, there's a number of different point of views out there regarding the Missouri model. And the idea is that the Missouri model takes you away from the type of thing you see pictured here, where people are heavily labeled and treated as inmates, to a rehabilitation orientation. And the question I was trying to get at was, is this really a sustainable, good model? Is this really the right approach for juveniles? And there was lots of very interesting points of view. I want to present something to think about that if you actually look at what some of the comments of some of your classmates said, some of you already sort of feel where I'm going with this. The thing with the Missouri model, and it's kind of the same deal with Scared Straight. Okay, you take a hardened kid off the street, I mean, the violent offenders, the predators, the ones that, well, quite frankly, grow up and wind up being the true, the killers, the robbers, the ones who put a gun in someone's face and don't think twice about pulling the trigger if they flinch. It happens. Those type of programs like Scared Straight or Missouri Model, which tries to develop a customized solution for each person, everyone's unique, blah, 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 doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work for those people in particular is because what happened, and it's not just them, but they're the extreme case. But anybody who is going to go back into the same environmental conditions, dysfunctional family, broken homes, broken neighborhoods, etc. They're going to go back into those neighborhoods, and the architecture, if you will, the social architecture, the social ecology is really the right phrase. That hasn't changed. So, as a consequence, there's no way to really, unless the model goes so far as to then fix the family. Well, if you're going to fix the family, what about the neighborhood? What about the neighborhood with their peer groups? What about the schools? See, it's a good idea for those who are pre-oriented towards being receptive to this kind of treatment, if you will. A lot of the kids that we're really worried about aren't. They don't have, they're not going back into locations where people are going to be receptive to the fact that they've changed. I'm telling you, I've seen it firsthand. Now, can this work? Absolutely. Is it sustainable? I don't think so. Not very easily. It requires a tremendous amount of effort, where it's a lot easier just to warehouse people. It's a lot cheaper. And you might say, well, that's horrible. That is horrible, but it's reality. Because if you think about think about the fiscal climate we've been in particular the last 6 years, 5 years, whatever, 5, 6 years. The country is except at the federal level, but the states just can't print their own money. And they're not predisposed towards throwing tons and tons of money at, rehabilitation programs for juvenile offenders. They're more likely to say, fuck them. Throw away the key, stick them someplace, forget about it, But the ones who are reachable tend to be the property crime offenders, low-level offenders, and the ones, especially if they're going back into environments that are going to be receptive to their change. So those are the kind of critiques and criticisms I was looking for ultimately when asking about the sustainable. Is this sustainable? Well, there's a cost issue because everything has to be tailored. And there's also does this really work? Well, it works for some people. It cannot work for all people. It's just simply, there truly isn't enough resources, even if we wanted to throw gobs and gobs of resources at the problem. Okay, the other discussion board was about SEPTED, and there was a number of issues that were raised, and we're going to get into this more next week, meaning week 9, because we're going to combine discussion boards from 8 and 9 together. And then you'll also have your assignment due in week 9, I believe. That's the situational crime prevention one. So SEPTED, as I think you saw from well, you should have seen from the podcast, is an evolution of thought. It starts with this concept of defensible space and then evolves into SEPTED, and then SEPTED becomes problem-oriented policing. Problem-oriented policing becomes situational crime prevention, and each of these innovations builds upon the previous one and adds new elements. So with SEPTED, we're really looking at how people use a space, not a place, but a particular environment, and how you can design the environment to reduce the unwanted behaviors from occurring or make them more obvious that they are occurring. And that, the ideal situation involves what they call natural strategies. So by the way the pathways are designed and the grass is cut and the lighting and things like that creates, inherently natural strategies that allow for the maximum use of the space, but at the same time allows it for people to quote-unquote naturally be surveilled. No mechanics, no cameras, whatever. It's when we start adding layers in like mechanical devices and armed guards, that's what SEPTED tries to avoid, if possible. Because this is ultimately not about police on patrols and things like that. This is really about the fixed built environment. Whereas things like problem-oriented policing and situational crime prevention, that takes into account mostly the behaviors and the environmental opportunities and how to undermine those opportunities, partially from a patrol pattern perspective, but also other avenues as well. But SEPTED is truly, strictly about the built environment and how the built environment is a progenitor of crime or is sort of trying to push people to an alternative perspective. Now, I asked a question in the discussion boards about the ethical issues, and we're going to return to that in the situational crime prevention, but there are ethical concerns about the overly controlled environment. I asked a question about First Amendment issues and Second Amendment, or not First Amendment, sorry, not Second Amendment, First Amendment. Okay, so what I was getting at with there, and I'm going to actually I have a really cool presentation on surveillance. I'm going to throw it up there if I can find it. It's a podcast. It's a cool podcast. Anyway, the thing about the First Amendment is that it gives you, and actually one of your classmates, Jen Frazier, I was alluding to this in the SEPTED discussion board. One of the aspects of the First Amendment is that it gives you freedom of movement, okay, anonymous movement, and anonymous political speech. Well, let me give you an example. There's several cases from the 1950s. One that comes to mind is Powell v. Alabama. This is a case where the state of Alabama tried to sue the NAACP as opposed to NCAA, which is football and college sports. So the NAACP. For the list of people in the state who were state employees who had contributed to the NAACP. Why would they do that? Because, well, if it's not obvious, during the 1950s and 60s, during the Civil Rights era, the racist bastards in the southern states were trying to ostracize, or worse, those white folk who were amenable or helpful to the cause of blacks, basically. It's primarily blacks. It wasn't just blacks, but primarily it was blacks, especially in the South. So, NAACP said, hell no, we're not giving you our list of people. We're First Amendment right. So it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, you're absolutely right. You have First Amendment right to organize and petition your government, even do it anonymously, or through a third party. The state only has a compelling interest if they have probable cause to believe that the organization is acting in violation of law. And since the NAACP was certainly not, in those days, acting in violation of the law, they were contesting their government to change the law to make it more fair for all groups, or equal, really, I should say, not fair. Um, so what's the point of that? Well, suppose, let's move it in the modern era. So sometimes about the built environment and what have you. And let's suppose every car that goes into a particular area of the city has there's a license plate camera that reads all the license plates and records the entry and exit of those cars. Let's suppose that it records the entry and exit of those cars onto a block that happens to have the headquarters of a political group that some people don't like. Maybe it's a Tea Party group. Maybe it's a KKK group. Maybe it's a, I don't know, some other kind of group that some might be offended to and some might be attracted to. Either way, you have a right to belong to a group, even if it's, some nonsense bullshit like the KKK. I'm not suggesting you should belong to the KKK, but you have a right to do it, even if it's foolish. Anyway, so what's the point of all this? Well, now somebody who has access to that data about what license plates are going into what areas and what have you can discern, well, maybe they're going to the meeting of the Tea Party Patriots. And now you get labeled as a potential Tea Party Patriots, and then we set the IRS on you. That would never happen. Oh, wait. Wait a second. I'm starting to... My spidey sense is sort of ticking. Why is that? Oh, right, because the government is using the IRS, for political means. So my point is that, these are the potential big picture issues that relates to SEPTED, but beyond SEPTED, that now we're getting into issues of what's called social control or data valence. It's using data to surveil people and stuff. These are kind of advanced concepts beyond this class. When we do get into them in the cybercrime class. Now, by the way, a side note, one of your classmates referred to herself as being too blonde to take our cybercrime classes. Bullshit. Those classes are not about the technologies. They're not going to turn you into a cyber, technical person. It's actually everything but, actually working with the technologies. As it turns out, in that field, there's a number of different domains that are relevant, from investigators to legal aspects, ethical issues, substantive law issues, inspector general type work, governance accountability, compliance. There's all kinds of things that go into cybercrime and issues of administration. So anyway, I digress. So why no DBs in week 8? Well, perhaps it's because of the medical issue that I alluded to earlier. Nope. No, it wasn't my medical issue. It's somebody else's. But I am always. I don't want to say I'm a workaholic, but let's just say I get a lot done. So nope, not the case. Well, perhaps it's because of college football. Here we go. Ohio State. Alabama, good teams, good times. Number 1, number 2, as it turns out. So maybe it's about football. How about no? Listen, I have no empathy or sympathy for, well, maybe empathy, but I have no sympathy for anybody who misses college football or whatever during football season while they're in grad school. Because I was in grad school for 5 years, and I can tell you that I missed a lot of football games, so sorry, care less. No disrespect, but no. Maybe it's because it's Labor Day, and I'm thinking, hey, all the unions are marching, and you want to get your march on? Survey says, hell no. You really don't know. If you really thought that, and I doubt any of you did, but if you really did, then you haven't quite figured me out yet. That's not your problem to figure me out. That's my wife's problem. But seriously, no, it's nothing to do with that. It's because, like Mario, I'm a global force for good. Meaning that you guys have put a lot of effort, especially in week 7. You guys, the discussion board, man, my head was spinning reading all those threads. And I really wanted to see how you guys interacted with each other and challenged and debated each other without me telling you what to say or what to do or prodding you or what have you. Because ultimately, whether or not you are successful is to the degree that you can take the things you're learning in this program and apply them on your own, because no one's going to be sitting on your shoulder saying, well, what about this? What about that? Because you're going to be the expert. You're going to be the one. As a matter of fact, that actually, it's funny. That's what our advertising is, our marketing. If you recall, it's like, be the one. Well, you be the one. So I was very pleased with the overall tenor and debate that occurred. So now, for those of you, one of you knows for sure, but most of you probably don't, maybe not familiar with a global force of good. That's the Navy tagline these days. It used to be "Go Navy!" Now it's a global force for good. And I love this ad. See, it's got the carrier, and you can see there's a plane landing if you look real close. And all it says is sleep tight. Why? Because CVN 76, Peace Through Strength, is rocking it out in wherever it is. For those who don't know, CVN 76 is, wait for it, that's the USS Ronald Reagan. It's our newest, baddest supercarrier. Anyway, well, I got nothing else at this point. So, have a good Labor Day.